Coming up next, an interview with a man who's on a very short list of the greatest singers of the rock era. But here's the thing, he never gets his due. He's had numerous hits, his voice is so gritty, and his range is so high. At his peak, he could go toe-to-toe with anybody, and I'm talking Robert Plant or any of them. Coming up next, he covers his greatest hits with me, including the song that put him on the map, but it was a total accident. Now, he was invited to sing backup for a famous guitarist for a song that guitarist had written. But during the session, the famous producer there said, let's give this rookie background singer a try. Just have him try a take and see how it goes. That take was so amazing, it blew everyone away. And luckily, the engineer was recording. Even the famous guitarist was like, it's your song, brother. You got to hear the story from him. Soon after the song went up the charts, it barely missed number one, though. But then decades later, after it was used in a big movie, it finally hit number one. And they had a great conversation about the guitarist and the singer. We also cover one of the best rock songs that he sang that relaunched a famous band after years of struggle. And he also reacts to a song that many critics say is the worst song of all time. The problem is none of them bothered to listen to the lyrics, leaving this song completely misunderstood, and he lets us know about it. He's had 10 big hits, including 3 number ones that defined an era with his incredible vocal chops. It's time to give him his due. Here's the interview.
Well, it was one of those things, when they talk about destiny and kismet and fate and all that, it was something in my life that certainly makes me believe that there must be something to that. The Sonny and Cher show was in full swing back then. This is like late 1971, early 72. So we're watching the Sonny and Cher show one night, and there was this wild-eyed, crazy gospel singer on there with this band called Gideon and Power. And he was just like wearing like this silver robe, with this thing tied around his head, this elaborate scarf, and he's running all through the audience. And it's like pure gospel music, but more with contemporary lyric. And then his band was very unusual too. He had like a guitarist, a piano player, a bass player, no drummer, and then like 3 background singers. So he made a big impression on me. I've never seen anything like that in my life. So about a week later, I'm not kidding you, I'm sitting in the same apartment, Valdosta, Georgia. My phone rings one afternoon. I answer the phone. Hello? Is this Mickey Thomas? I go, yeah. He goes, this is Gideon Daniels calling. I said, you mean like the same guy who was on Sonny and Cher last weekend? And he goes, yes, that's me. And I'm like, well, why are you calling me? And one of his singers had left the band, and he got it in his head that because it was very important to Gideon to have like multi-ethnic, multiracial look and feel to his whole band, because that was a big thing of his about tearing down all the barriers at that time. Oh, yeah. So he said, yeah, I've decided that to kind of round out my band, what I need is a white male Southern tenor to be in my band, which was based in San Francisco. And he was in Tallahassee, Florida, just talking to people, telling them what he was doing. And some guy who worked at a shop, what we used to call head shops, knew about me and knew that I lived in Valdosta, and he had heard me sing, and he knew I had a kind of a high voice. So he gave Gideon my number, and Gideon called me. And I say it was life-changing for me, because really up to that point in time, even though I wanted to sing, and I had been in several bands and tried to sing, but I wasn't really a singer yet. I wasn't very good. But Gideon heard something in there, that this kind of untapped.
Then, of course, after that, Elvin Bishop group, background singer.
Yeah.
Tell me about how that came together.
Because of Gideon.
Yeah.
Gideon was already friends with Elvin Bishop when I came out to San Francisco to join up with his band. And so we would go around on the weekends if we weren't performing, and to wherever Elvin would be playing around the San Francisco area, where the San Francisco, Oakland, Marin County clubs, and we would just go and hang out and sit in with Elvin and jam and sing. And after one of those nights, we went back to Elvin's apartment in San Francisco. This was probably about 1973. And we're sitting around the living room playing and singing. And Elvin just kind of played a bit of this song that he was working on. And it sounded kind of like this, actually. It was kind of rough. Yeah. And this is 1973, and he's sitting down, and he's like... I fooled around and fell in love. Of course, it was Elvin singing. Fooled around and fell in love. So it sounded a little different than that.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
So, but I remembered that song. It just stuck in my head,
Yeah.
like just a ray of light. So then a couple of years go by. I kind of run the course with Gideon. I moved back to Georgia in 1974. And then Elvin came down to Georgia to record for Capricorn Records.
Yeah.
He called me up and invited me to come up and sing some background vocals on the Joint Jump album. And that went well. So then he said, well, why don't you join up with the band, come back to San Francisco and, I need some help with vocals, harmonies, background vocals, whatever, maybe some duets, a few leads. So I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to get back to San Francisco. So 75, back to San Francisco again, joined up with the Elvin Bishop band. Late 75, we're down in Miami, Florida, recording my the first album that I did with Elvin as a full-fledged member of the band. We had pretty much recorded the whole album working with Bill Simzik, legendary producer who's produced so many great, the Eagles and Jay Giles and Seeger. And we pretty much cut all the tracks, and we're sitting around, and Simzik says, well, do you have anything else? He says, I think we're just kind of missing something that would sort of round out the album, And Elvin goes, well, I can't think of anything. And I said, hey, what about that? Remember that?
Oh,
Elvin's like,
man.
that old dog? And I said, yeah, because that, like I said, I always remember that song. I always felt this special affinity for it. So Simzik said, well, let me hear it, So Elvin played it for him in the studio, and he goes, I like it. Let's cut it. Let's cut the track. So we cut the track, and Elvin's singing it, right? But it wasn't working out, obviously,
And that gravelly voice.
Yeah, it didn't seem to fit the song, and which is probably why Elvin didn't want to, hadn't thought about recording it in the first place, because it wasn't quite right for his voice. So Simzik says, do you want to give this one a shot? And I said, you're damn right. So I did. And, like I said, I always had a very special feeling for the song. And urban myth says that it's a one-take vocal, but it's really two takes. It's one take up to the solo and then a separate take after the solo. Another cool thing about the song is we recorded that at Criteria Recording Studios at Miami Beach, which is that, very famous recording studio. And it was right after Derek and the Dominoes had recorded, their great album there with Layla and all that stuff on it.
Yep.
So there was a huge grand piano out in the studio there that was called the Layla piano. And that's also the piano that's on Fooled Around and Fell in Love. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Same piano?
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
That is really cool.
It was the first really full-fledged album that I'd been a part of recording in the studio. So when you have that experience, like, so many bands, sometimes it's like the debut album is sometimes the best because you have this kind of lifetime of experience that you're bringing to that first album. So again, it was the influence of Gideon, his gospel vocals, which I just basically, like when I said I learned how to sing with Gideon, we would just walk the streets of San Francisco and he would sing all of these old gospel songs, and I would just try to imitate whatever he was doing until I finally found it. So the gospel influence is definitely on Fooled Around and Fell in Love, especially the kind of ad-libbing jam part after the free and on my own.
Yeah.
That's the way I used to be.
Man.
I mean, that's kind of churchy.
On my own, that's the way I used to be.
And then before that, the more structured verses are just kind of more my R&B influence, I think.
Well, it kind of reminds me of when, Levi Stubbs and the Four Tops used to do that,
Yeah.
If you feel, you just really, you feel that song.
And then there's Elvin solo, like you said, very blues oriented.
Oh, yeah.
In the bridge, we were able to, incorporate some of my Beatle influences. With the,
Yeah.
So we kind of got it all in there, so one way or another.
Simply one of the greatest songs of all time. There's no question. And such an impact on pop culture. I mean, Boogie Nights, you know, started there, and of course, it's been an Invincible and The Family Stone, and you know, all of those movies. But tell me what you thought about Guardians of the Galaxy, man.
It was awesome, man. We fooled around, turned up in Guardians of the Galaxy, mostly because I have an 18-year-old son who just, you know, loves all of those kind of movies. You know, he's a huge, you know, Avengers, you know, fan, and you know, everything. And so, so he was like, he couldn't wait for Guardians of the Galaxy to come out. I mean, he'd been anticipating for months and months. And then he's the one who first told me, he said, "Dad, did you know your song's in Guardians of the Galaxy?"
Really?
I said, "Which one?" And he goes, "Fooled Around and Fell in Love." And I'm thinking, okay, sci-fi, action, futuristic adventure. How does Fooled Around and Fell in Love fit into this picture? Literally this picture. Yeah. And then, you know, so I found out that the whole soundtrack was kind of a 70s based soundtrack. And then I, you know, found out why it was like that, because of the connection with the hero, with his mom, you know, from the 70s, that she had given him this music that he took into the future with him. And I thought, well, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And obviously whoever the genius is who came up with that concept worked pretty well. Not only the biggest movie of the year, but the biggest soundtrack of the year.
Yeah.
And a whole new generation of Fooled Around and Fell in Love fans. Yeah.
So what's interesting about the Guardians soundtrack is, you know, I remember seeing it was the only #1 soundtrack in history that have no new songs on it, just
no original
just the
song.
70s, just music from the 70s, you know?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's pretty amazing.
Well, it just shows you the power of that music of our youth, you know, and
it is, and how it connects with a younger generation.
The melody is pleasant.
Tell me about when you called Elvin up after it went to #1, the Guardians soundtrack.
Well, you know, first of all, I'm in touch with Elvin a lot.
Yeah, we toured with him.
Yeah,
you know, yeah.
So, you know, I call him when this whole thing with Guardians of the Galaxy was going down, this phenomenon, and I said, "Elvin, can you believe this? I mean, the soundtrack debuted at #1 in Billboard." And he said, "Well, Mick, it took 38 years, but Fooled Around finally made it to #1. I said, "Yeah."
So Jefferson Starship, tell me how that came together after, because 1979 and Marty Ballin and Grace had left the band, and they were kind of going through some changes there. How did that come together?
Well, they were going through some changes. Marty, Grace had both left the band. The drummer, John Barbado, had gotten into a serious car crash right about the same time, and he was going to be laid up for years, unable to play drums. So there was really a lot of question about whether or not the Jefferson Starship would even try to continue on. But the remaining members, you know, Paul Kantner, Craig Chiquiso, Pete Sears, David Freiberg, decided, okay, yeah, we want to stick together. We're going to try to reinvent the band. And so they brought Ainsley Dunbar in on drums.
Yeah, Journey.
Journey, and played with Whitesnake, Journey, David Bowie, John Mayall, way back, you know. So then the 5 of them all started jamming together, and then they're like, well, we need a singer. So, you know, and they were all based in San Francisco. I was still living in San Francisco right after I'd left the Elvin Bishop band, getting ready to go do As Long As You Love. No, actually, I'd already done As Long As You Love.
Yeah.
I was getting ready for my second solo album with Bill Simzik, and I get a phone call, really, just out of the blue. From the band saying, hey, would you be interested in coming by and meeting the guys and hanging out and doing a little jamming and possibly singing with the band? I'm like, Jefferson Starship? And, you know, I'm fresh out of the Elvin Bishop band. So I'm thinking like, how does this work?
Yeah.
How does this go together? You know, because that's not I mean, you know, I knew who they were, but Jefferson Starship was not exactly my cup of tea. I was very hesitant about even giving it a shot. Because like I said, I was just getting ready to go to Miami and start another solo album. So then the more hesitant I was, the more they kind of interpreted that as, oh, this guy's playing hard to get, you know, which I really wasn't. So the more I said no, the more they wanted me. So finally I said, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I went by and met the guys. We hung out in Paul Kantner's living room and we jammed some, and they played me some of the new songs they were working on, one of them, which was Jane. So when I first sang Jane with the band, and I thought, oh boy, this is not anything like the Jefferson Starship that I had heard or knew of in my mind. And I thought, this is pretty cool. You know, we may have something here. So it was really pretty much Jane that did it for me. And then, so in my own mind, I said, you know, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'll give them 3 years and 2 albums, and then I'll be off to something else.
Yeah.
So I joined the band, and we went to LA, and we recorded Freedom at Point Zero, and Jane was
right here.
There it is.
Yep.
He's probably 40 years old now, this kid or more.
Yeah.
And so we did Freedom at Point Zero, came out of the box with Jane as
Yeah.
the first single, and that was the calling card for the all-new Jefferson Starship.
Well, Jane is another big hit, another great song from that time. Went to number 14, but it went number 6, top 5 on Cashbox, I remember. Yeah,
And it was back in those days, you know, what was just as important really as Billboard Top 40 was, you know, what were called the AOR tracks.
Yep.
Album-oriented radio tracks.
Yeah.
It was, you know, because there was still that FM AM kind of thing going on back then.
Yeah.
And FM radio was just as big, but didn't really cater to the Billboard Top 40.
Right.
So anyway, Jane debuted number 1 on those tracks.
Yeah. And another great song, great vocal. How did that kind of come together as a song? You know, tell me a little bit about that.
You know, it was kind of in its rough stage when I first started jamming with the band and rehearsing it, and we kind of it sort of evolved over the course of a couple of weeks. David Freiberg kind of had the meat of the song. He was the primary writer on it. But then we would all kind of add our embellishments to it. You know, I think that Craig came up with the little intro riff on the guitar. Ding, ding, ding,
Oh,
ding,
yeah.
ding, 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 ding. So yeah, you know, that was back in the day when you come in with a song, usually it was in a skeletal form, and then all the band members would have some input into arranging it and adding their own, you know, individual personality. So we did that with Jane. I just kind of brought in my sort of combination of Elvin Bishop band, Gideon Daniels, blues, gospel. You know, and it kind of, for some reason, it worked on this sort of hard rock bed that we had going on with Jane.
Yeah, quite a departure, like we said, from Jefferson Starship.
Well, you know, again, I think I was so lucky, really, with the influences that I had.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with Gideon and Elvin, because I was kind of coming from a different place than a lot of other rock singers were in the late 70s and early 80s. You know, I kind of it gave me a little bit of a unique vibe there.
Let's talk about Knee Deep in the Hoopla, because this is a record that it was an album, a go-to album for us. It was kind of like for you having the Beatles. This is at this age I was discovering MTV. I was discovering music, and you know, Billy Joel and Innocent Man, and Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, and all those big albums that came out. Tina Turner, Private Dancer, and this one.
Yeah.
You know, and it came out, and it made such an impact on us. Like, this is cool music. Built this city on rock and roll, you know. And so tell me about putting this album together.
Right after Nuclear Furniture, when Paul Kantner left the band, we consciously, you know, decided, okay, we're really going to shake it up now. Well, there's going to be a whole new way of doing things. And it's going to be a risk. It's going to be a gamble, but there's no other way to go about doing this.
Right.
We're going to reinvent ourselves. So we did. You know, we brought in Peter Wolf as producer with Jeremy Smith. We started exploring and using all the new innovations as far as recording techniques with sampling, synthesizers, synclaviers, you name it, sequencing, you know, and it was fun.
Say you don't know me, I recognize my face.
New ways to create, you know, a new palette. And we really felt like with the departure of Paul and reinventing and everything, we were just like kids who had just been let loose. And so, yeah, we set out to do that. We wanted to make some songs that were very radio friendly. We didn't see anything wrong with that.
No.
We built this city, on the other hand, was one that my good friend Martin Page sent me.
Great
A great writer and a good friend. So I got the demo and I thought, oh man, this is really a cool, kind of quirky little song, has kind of a nostalgic feel to me and sort of a feel of lost innocence. I thought, I really want to do this song, but I never, in my wildest imagination, thought it would be a single.
Really?
Or considered as a single. So it didn't have a chorus. When I brought it into the band, the whole, we built this city on rocket, wasn't in it. Peter Wolf and Dennis Lambert, who was the executive producer on this album.
And he was a great writer too. Wrote Ain't No Woman Like the One I Got.
Yeah,
and,
man.
Night Shift, another great
Night Shift
song.
So they said, yeah, we like the song, but it doesn't have a chorus. I said, well, okay. So they said, well, let's see what we can do. So then Peter and Dennis kind of came up with the chorus, and somehow it worked in the context of the song. But even then, still, I didn't hear it as like the first single or the debut single from the album. Yeah. And so we finished the album, and I was thinking the whole time that Sarah was probably going to be the first single.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was the most kind of obvious commercial song, but commercial in the sense that it was really different and groundbreaking as far as the voicings of the chords and all the sounds we'd come up with. So the A&R guy at BMG, a great guy by the name of Paul Atkinson, who used to be in the Zombies. And he said, we built this city as your first single. I said, are you kidding me? That's it, man. That's it, mate. That's it, mate. So I said, okay, well, you know better than me. That's your job, and so they put it out and,
went to number one, man.
Went to number one, first number one single on, Billboard in the history of the band, going all the way back to Jefferson Airplane and everything. Even Miracles was never a number one single.
Yeah.
So.
Listen to the radio, don't you remember?
So it was a validation, really, for the risk that we had taken, and a great time for the band, a real happy time.
And the video, too, is one of those iconic videos of the 80s. I remember as a little kid sitting in front of TV watching Friday night videos, waiting for it to come on,
Yeah.
Built this city on rock and roll.
You had the different DJs that put their parts into it, because you have the guy saying, and then the radio stations could put their bit in it, right?
That part of the song was supposed to be a solo. It was just kind of an instrumental passage there in the song. But we couldn't quite figure out what to do with it solo-wise. And our good friend of the band, a guy by the name of Les Garland. But Les was one of the trio of guys who started MTV. But Les started out years before that as he was a DJ in San Francisco. So he had been a long time close friend of Starship manager Bill Thompson. Les was in the studio that day. So we said, well, Les, why don't you just come out and do a DJ thing? And he says, really? I said, yeah, just go out, just off the cuff. So he did. He went out there and kind of, because he had been a DJ in San Francisco.
Right.
He made it sound like, hey, I'm looking out over that Golden Gate Bridge and the traffic is moving.
That Golden Gate Bridge on another gorgeous sunny Saturday, and I'm seeing that bumper-to-bumper traffic.
And it was really cool. So we put that on the record. But then our manager, Bill Thompson, had the brilliant idea of, well, we're going to give different singles to a version of a single to every city with that part blank, so they can all personalize it, whether it's Cleveland, Detroit, New York, Miami, Atlanta, whatever. And they did.
It was a brilliant
So it was a good marketing move by our manager.
Your favorite radio station, your favorite radio city, the city by the bay, the city that rocks, the city that never...
Bill Bottrell, he engineered it, and he also did Michael Jackson Bad.
Yes, he did. And you know what?
A few years later.
Another thing, since you mentioned that, when we gave him the song to mix, the a cappella intro was not on it.
Really?
Yeah, it just started with the dun, dun,
Dun, dun, that part, yeah.
That's the way it started. And that's how we gave it to him. And so in the mix, he got the idea of lifting the background vocals out of the chorus, flying them in to the intro, and created this a cappella intro for the song, which was such an instant attention grabber. Well, I got to give Bill props on that one.
Oh, that's really cool.
Built this city. We built this city on...
It's interesting because it's been in these worst songs, thing or whatever. But
Francis
honestly,
voted
that's
the
actually kept it more alive. People are like,
know.
people get ticked off. They're
Yeah,
like,
well,
that's not true.
One of my best friends is Jack Hughes from Wang Chung, and I think Everybody Wants to Have Fun Tonight was voted as the second worst record. So I said, You and I have number 1 and 2 as the most hated songs of all time.
And I love those songs, you know?
As far as some of the criticism of the song, you know, I mean, I understand it, you know, I get it. It's like, I think what happened with We Built the City is it sort of became the poster child for a whole sound that was starting to happen and emerge and evolving in the 80s that just pissed a lot of people off. All this electronica and all this stuff, not organic and da-da-da. You know, it's funny too, it's like mentioning it being kind of the prime example of this whole trend in music that a lot of critics and people didn't like. And they this whole term corporate rock cropped up in the mid 80s, you know. And so this is like, oh, that's corporate rock. And I'm like, well, obviously you didn't listen to the lyrics. You could see that that's exactly what we're talking about. That
Corporation games.
are against here.
Second single, Sarah, your second straight number 1 song. What's your number 1?
Yeah, well, that was one too. Like when that first came out, all my friends in LA, you know, studio musicians and serious musicians, you know, audiophiles would be calling me like, man, how did you get this sound or that sound or what is that? So, you know, it definitely tweaked some people's ears. You know, the song, it was brought to me by, again, Peter Wolf brought it to me and said, I've written something for you. I was actually on vacation and he called me and goes, I got a song that I've written for you. He says, I love it. It's going to be a smash. Da, 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 da. And he goes, and it's called Sarah. Oh, okay. Because, you know, I was married to a Sarah at the time. Yeah. And so I thought, well, okay, but I mean, how, you know, what's it like? And then I got home and he played it for me. And I wasn't really that crazy about it, you know, as far as the demo. And, you know, I thought, well, you know, it's kind of a sad song, kind of a, you know, bittersweet song. But once we got in the studio, again, we started working with it, adding this, a little bit of that, you know, and it started to really take shape. And, you know, it definitely grew on me. And as I said, I thought it would probably be the first single from the album.
Make sure to leave us a comment about Mickey Thomas. What are your favorite songs? What are your memories of these songs? Let's have a great discussion below. I'd love to invite you to subscribe. I'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.